Welcome to Not What I Thought. I'm Erica.
I'm Yolanda.
And I'm Becca. We're therapists, entrepreneurs, and perfectly imperfect humans.
We first met during a business owner retreat where we became fast friends because we're not afraid to be real and ask the hard questions about life. What we thought it would be like, how messy it actually is, and the courage it takes to create the life we want.
We continue to build our friendship and personal growth through our own retreats. We find the deepest connection in sharing our struggles and finding what we have in common rather than what divides us.
We're breaking down hard topics on our podcast and together have conversations about what it takes to find real talk, real support, and real rest for professional women. We're glad you're here. Join us on your favorite podcast platform.
Okay, we are so excited to have Stacy on today to tell us her Not What I Thought story. So, Stacy, let's get into it.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Stacy Schaffer. I'm a child, adolescent, young adult therapist in the Denver, Colorado area. I was born in Las Vegas though, which is not my fault, just for the record. Just jot that down. And so I am approaching about 20 years in private practice, and I specialize in grief and anxiety. And about a decade ago is when I started really doing a lot of my intense healing work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking about writing a book about what I see on the other side of the couch from kids and teens, like in this generation, because like there's a lot happening. And also, as I started doing my own healing work, I'm like, there are things that I extracted, and it was not what I thought the book was going to be, because it turned into it's part called as part memoir, part guide to not emotionally damage the next generation. So
I'd love to know, Stacy, like what was the thing that sort of led you to want to write the book and want to do some of your own healing? Were those separate things, or was it like, hey, I'm going to write a book and that meant, oh, surprise, here's a bunch of my own healing? Like, can you talk us through how that came to be?
yeah, I think there are a series of events. Because I used to think that if anybody kind of knew the depths of my story, it would unqualify me, if you will,
Mm,
from being like a respected clinician. And really, what I learned, plot twist, is that when you do your own work and you have personal lived experience plus professional like wisdom, then that creates a really powerful combination. I was always been really like fairly open. My mom died when I had just turned 22, and she was my last living relative. And so I was like flailing around in the world on my own, but I specialized in grief, and it wasn't a really tricky thing to talk about. Because I'm like, there's more down there, guys, but like, look at the shiny grief. And so I would say that people might have said at that time, like, yeah, like she's really open. She talks about like, her mom dying and anticipatory grief and all the things. And so I really thought, because there's this, I mean, it depends on how long we have, but there's a whole backstory. It's pretty big. And I genuinely thought that that could just stay there. Like that's it's packaged. Nobody needs to see that. And so what we know, right, as clinicians, is that it comes out sideways. And so that it's like, that's cute that you think it can stay in the box. And so I really think that had my book just been a like compilation of things I've seen with my own eyes on the other side of the couch, it wouldn't be as powerful as it is. Because what I'm learning is that people really connect to the authenticity, the like lack of shininess that I thought once upon a time was what people wanted.
I don't think I want to respond to what you just said, and I'm not confident that I even have like a point, but I'm finding something like so tremendously relatable about what you just described with
Mhm.
like other people probably would have perceived me as being this person who is really open, and they have no idea that there is all this stuff that I don't share that's kept hidden. And I just think there's like a part of that that probably feeds a sense of loneliness and disconnection, that probably feeds a sense of shame, even. That's like people have this perception of me, but I know that I'm not really that. I think that that's probably a common experience for a lot of mental health professionals. Um, but I think that's a pretty common experience for anyone who is like a helper or caretaker, especially in a professional way, that we sort of have to present as a certain amount of open. And it's not that that's necessarily inauthentic, because we may be really genuinely caring and loving towards these people, but there's this like tension that happens in the relationship where maybe I know a lot about you and you think that I'm really open, but you have no idea the things that I don't tell
Right.
you.
For sure. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I went to school like, with the dinosaurs like forever long ago, but it used to be the teaching about you, sure, you can have stuff, but that needs to be resolved before like you put your butt in the chair. Like
Hmm.
that's great. You have a backstory, but like let's tie that up. And from my understanding, it's not like that anymore. Now there's better awareness, like, as time evolves, there's better awareness that, like, that's not really the healthiest approach. That most grad school programs, to my knowledge, like, you need to be in your own counseling and like doing your own work. And I would have said I am because my mom, exhibit A, she
Hmm.
died like the summer before my last semester of college. And
Hmm.
so like I like had the authenticity piece like in the bag. And so, but the reality is that there was so much energy pushing the other stuff down,
Hmm.
that there wasn't a lot of room for anything else. That I was like, don't look in that room.
Hmm.
And it was like that room doesn't exist. And then when the room, like the container didn't hold anymore, that's what makes it trickier. Like I say to kids, if they're my like clients, like if there's something that you feel really embarrassed about or really ashamed about, it's like bringing food to your room. Like you can bring it, it's like whatever, but then like you forget about it and throw clothes over it. And then eventually it starts to smell. And you're like, this is fine. You spray stuff, this is fine. But then other people can smell it. And then you have a big moldy mess on your hands. And then, like, so I love dealing with kids like on the front end of their lives so that we don't develop patterns like I did.
Mhm. Meaning what?
Meaning,
What are the patterns that you are trying to help?
meaning, yeah, meaning like, I stole Tic Tacs and I
Mhm.
feel really embarrassed about it. And so I am just gonna be really ashamed over here. And then like, well, maybe it wasn't so bad. So then I'll do that again. But I'm not gonna tell anyone. And at this point, we've like started to develop a habit of stealing.
Mhm.
I'm just making this up. And they develop a pattern of stealing, and then they're like, I can't really talk about where it began because then I have to tell you all of the rest. It's like a domino
Mhm.
effect of shame.
Mhm. It's such a an interesting conversation because as I'm hearing you talk, Stacy, I'm just thinking that I'm not sure that there are any of us who enter into the helping profession who aren't wounded healers in our own ways, right? Everybody on the screen is nodding.
Yeah.
And and it is that combination of yes, my personal history definitely impacts my entry into the field and how I show up into the field. And yes, I do need to have like a level of healing to be able to be effective, but then also kind of continuing to peel back the layers as they come up as I continue to live my life. That's been my personal journey, right? You know, you have this level of quote unquote healing, and then I don't know, I see it with clients all the time, and I know it's true in my personal life, right? It's like the journey takes you this far, and then something happens in life, and you're like, oh shit, there's this next piece to address. And so as helper and healer who also has written kind of a memoir-esque book, did you find that the writing of your book itself was part of like that piece of healing or a piece of healing for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for the longest time, like I felt like a lack of integration. And so now
Mhm.
I say, my insides match my outsides. And so that it was like a full here you go, as instead of being afraid that I'm going to be like discovered for having this really hard backstory. I feel like, nope, like I own it now, that I'm
Mhm.
just like, here it is. And obviously, that there are things that are reserved just for my therapist because she's lucky that way, that it's just for her.
Mhm.
And, in my private circles, like things for obvious reasons, it's not my journal.
Mhm.
But that it's like the core of the story. I'm able to talk about anything like in here. Like one of my childhood friends told me that she's like, I wanted to talk to you about a thing because she was directly impacted by a part of my story. And I was nervous. And she's like, my therapist told me she wrote a book. She can talk about it.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, I mean, it's true. And so I just feel like I can breathe easy, that it's like the truth of the core of my story has been written down, and it's available to be extracted for wisdom. But like I say in there, it's important to speak from your scars, not your open wounds.
Mhm.
And so it's really important that there's nothing bleeding like in
Mhm.
there, and that it's not like I'm not looking to be taken care of, that I'm like, I have
Mhm.
arrived at a point that I can process these things, and here you go, take what you will.
Mhm. It's lovely.
Thanks.
Yeah. I was kind of curious, like using your analogy about the food, right? Was there a place where you found yourself with this moldy mess that you were like, oh gosh, I have to do something now. I have to do something different?
Yeah, so basically what happened, like with me starting to like unpack like all of the stuff, it was a dinner party. It was this time of year. It was a dinner party, and we were laughing. Everything was fine. We're laughing, and people were talking about with what the trouble they got into when they were kids.
Mhm.
And somebody's like, "Oh my gosh, did I ever tell you this thing happened?" And someone else, "Did I ever tell you this thing happened?" And I was like, "Did I ever tell you that like I was kidnapped when I was 11 and missing for a
Mhm.
year?" And then I was like, and everyone's
Mhm.
like stares at me. I was like, record stop. And I was like, oh, I didn't
Mhm.
mention that.
Mhm.
Oops. Like it just like, bleh. There was no alcohol involved. There was no alcohol. It just like
Mhm.
came out. And so everyone's like, no, you didn't mention that. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I didn't, did I? Hmm. Hmm. And so I started doing some investigative work. Like maybe I should see a trauma therapist. And so that's
Mhm.
when I started like unpacking, and it's a whole it's a whole long thing. I don't know how long we have ladies, but it's a whole long thing. But that's like when it started, that I was like, oh, and like even though I felt really exposed in that moment, like it felt like the beginning of being able to clear out that like moldy food that I've just
Mhm.
protected for so long,
Mhm.
thinking I'm protecting everybody else in the room.
Mhm.
Mm. When you talk about protecting, do you mean like I'm protecting the other people who were involved
No.
in that? Okay, no, it's like I'm protecting the other people who are here who would be saddened by or burdened by this story.
Yeah, and I think I've done a lot of work on codependence.
Yeah.
But I used to feel really guilty because of my friends who have sobbed about my story, and
Mhm.
that it's hard for them. And I think
Mhm.
people are in a better spot now because again, I've been talking about it for like a decade, a little over, and so it was really hard as I was writing like some of the chapters, because it's intense. Like I try to be funny and there I think it's funny. It's a feedback, but it's also intense. And
Hmm.
so different friends, like as I'd write different chapters and send, like I think I finished this chapter, and people told me that like they cried and that, and it used to be like really hard for me because I'm like, I don't want, and then I was just like, my people are allowed to feel how they feel. Like that's it's a story that like impacts them because they love me, and I need to let people deal with whatever they're moving through as they read it. And so I think so. I mean, my jam is kickboxing. I punch bags so I don't punch people.
Hmm.
It's like it's my greatest self-care. And I would just like I do my best thinking at my bag. And so I would work out a lot of stuff on my bag. So
Hmm.
And is that a way that is that how the book got written?
I mean, it got written a chapter at a time because I was told that it takes a while to like get picked
Hmm.
up. But it didn't. And so I had already only submitted a little bit. And so then I just like sat down and write. Because when I sit down and write, like I can knock a whole chapter out. And so
Hmm.
it would just be like an idea that was like stirring. But
Hmm.
a good chunk of time was written in a small window.
Hmm.
Again, I'm making a connection that I'm not sure. I'm just gonna start talking. Um, there's another part of what you're saying that also feels really relatable for me, Stacy, with that like um what you said about I kind of don't want my friends to be crying about this because I feel bad that I've like put that on them or that I caused them to feel these feelings or whatever that is. And I loved that you came back around to like, well, this is what it looks like to let people love me, right? That these people would be moved with compassion. Um, Probably partly just because it's a human story, but then maybe even more so because they are people who already know and love you. And then this like is a deepening of like, oh my God, like this is what she went through. And now maybe I have even more respect and love for the person that she is. Um, and I think there's a part maybe that I'm connecting to with my own story. Um, that sort of has to do with like when interestingly also at the age of 11 like when there were things that happened for me that my family my environment like didn't know how to talk about
Mm,
know how to help me manage that it's like it lived in this place of like there's no words for this experience and so then as I became an adult and doing some of my own healing and able to talk about it it's like I almost don't know how to take in that like feedback and love and compassion that other people would want to give to me because it's always been a thing that was sort of hidden away or not talked about or like, kind of tied up with some kind of unspokenness or unspoken shame or whatever. Um, and yeah, I guess what I want to come back around to is like if there was any part of witnessing the love and compassion of the early readers of your book, um, that helped with the healing for you.
yeah, I mean, I think that um, it was really helpful in thinking of my friends like with kids, and they're like, I cannot imagine having Ada not have the support that she has, or and I think a lot of times like it's easier, I know, as a clinician to like do as I say, not as I do, and to be like, you should feel better about yourself, that it's like words you need to hear that need to be reflected back. So I think so. I mean, I think that the things that I were like afraid of the opposite happened. Like, I was afraid that I would lose credibility or that I would lose respect. And it just like it's like so opposite day to what actually happened. And people are just like, I had no idea. I'm like, of course you didn't. That was intentional. Like that was carefully curated. And so I think that I feel like I can like breathe easy now. And that like my friends, I mean, it's not like my story comes up every time we go to dinner. But I mean the promoting of the book comes up all the time. But like the contents of the story, like I no longer feel like I'm gonna be at dinner with a friend and like please don't ask me about
Mm.
that I'm just like like what do you want to know? And so that feels like in the process of writing my story, I owned my story. That it wasn't like, dirt on me, that it was like, here's what I've been through and I can talk about it and I win. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
So you talked about
Beautiful.
this way of like, it sounds like less anxiety and sort of mental chatter now. I'm not always worried about if this thing is going to come up. You talked about being a little more integrated. I'm wondering if you could say more or if there's anything else you would add to like how your life is better now because you did this work to heal the old stuff that you didn't want to look at.
oh, there's so much. But so I flew to Nashville to do my own audiobook. So the audiobook is
Awesome.
me. So you feel like this voice, it's me. And so what I'm learning is that a lot of people are into audiobooks. Like I am not, like I have a hard time paying attention, but it sounds like a lot of the population were busy and like to do audiobooks. So i.e. it's made it more accessible, i.e. some of my teenage clients have heard it. And
Mm.
so I had pulled up, it was a telehealth client that I'd seen for a long time. And we're chatting for 10 minutes. This is like soon when the book came out. And she's like, so I listened to your book. And I think if it was like I had been at a party and someone told me your backstory, like a decade ago, I would have been like, we're not actually, how do you feel about that? I don't want to know how you feel about that. Like, rah.
Mhm.
And so, but like my instant thought was like, I really don't want to make this session about my book unless that's something she wants to make it about.
Mhm.
Like, it would be like, let's make sure to like address whatever came up for her and then course correct, but like it didn't feel like my teenage client is suddenly going to lose all this respect for me
Mhm.
or like not want me to be her therapist anymore because of the darkness that I've been through. It was like, okay, like it's just another talking point in a session.
Mhm.
That it was like, okay, well, wow. And she's like, it's so good. And I was like, yeah, thanks. And inside, I'm feeling all this like discomfort, but it's not about her knowing. It's about like appropriate self disclosure. Like
Mhm.
that's what it was about. And so, but you have no control over it. Like who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Anybody? Anyone who got that reference? And so
Okay, and I got it.
And so it was less about like, rats, you've discovered me. It was like more about like, okay, like if there's anything that came up, which there was, like something that came up
Mhm.
connected to it, that it could be used as a talking point and not like the central focus of the session.
Mhm. There, it feels for me as I hear you say that, like a sense of freedom. I know professionally for myself, not just in writing my own book and that being out in the world, but also with other trainings that I have done that are, therapists is more of like co-traveler as opposed to some, whatever hierarchical
Expert.
expert. Um, so when I hear you describe that, I feel the sense of freedom that I have felt in being kind of this co-traveler. And I'm curious, and that might not be true for you. So I'm wondering, as you describe even that example, um, how, yeah, I mean, what's different now as opposed to before when it was the thing that, you know, you were
Yeah.
hoping that didn't get uncovered?
That's a good question. So my book, With Love from a Children's Therapist, and then it's hashtag Lessons I've Learned Along the Way is the
Hmm.
subtitle. And
Hmm.
so all of the chapters are hashtags,
Hmm.
which I fought for with my very many generations older publisher. I'm like, she's
Hmm.
like, I can't
Hmm.
read hashtags. I'm like, you're not the demographic.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but there is one of my favorite chapters is called hashtag Get Your Own Stacy. And then we compromise with having subtitles of the title. So it's hashtag Get Your Own Stacy, doing your inner work.
Hmm.
And so that is a really big platform of mine that
Hmm.
like I am like in that my therapist like is my client's grand therapist, that it's like not secret. So like for instance, like a kid said to me not too long ago, "Do you think I'm crazy? Like because I'm in counseling?"
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Are you kidding? Like I saw your grand therapist on Tuesday."
Hmm.
And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "You have a great grand therapist too." And there's probably a boss therapist at the end. And I'm like, "But it's hard out there. Have you been outside? It's hard. Like, are you
Hmm.
kidding me?" And I'm like, and it is not in a way that like I'm divulging the contents of my session, but
Sure.
I think that the more comfortable I am in my skin, the more
Hmm.
freedom it allows them to feel like
Hmm.
that. Like, I'm like, I don't have it all figured out. Like, you kidding? It's
Hmm.
hard out here. I'm like, this is the first time we've ever done this. Like, what? And
Hmm.
so I think that like having like a clear awareness that like, yeah, your therapist is like I'm actively doing my work so I can
Hmm.
actively show up better for like all of these young people in the world that, we've given them. And might as well like have a therapist you can talk to.
Hmm.
And so it's important to me that there's a clear designation that I absolutely, under no pretenses, have it all together, but I
Yeah.
present as shiny, right? Like, because, like, of course I do. Like, I'm not coming in like an SNL skit, like, sniffling. And I'm like, but like that I am real, and I think that it gives permission for them to be real too.
Yeah. Do you find, Stacey, can I ask, and past rules in effect, so if this hits too close to home or whatever, then just say, I don't want to answer. But and I notice in a lot of our conversation today, there's a lot of caveats and disclaimers. Um, by way of, for where I sit in a good way, of like, just to let everyone know, I'm not some kind of a hot mess express here. Like it's appropriate, self-disclosure and like all of that. But do you find that you have to, like, in spreading the word about the work that you do and your book, that you have to give a lot of these disclaimers, like I'm real, but like I'm not too like I'm appropriately real.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that was a good notice. I think so because
Yeah.
I don't know if that is like the common vibe
Mm.
in the kid therapy world at least.
Hmm.
And so that's important to me. And I don't know, like I would want as a parent like listening to me on one of these podcasts, like
Hmm.
to be like she does have a very clear separation between her stuff and my kids stuff, right?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I think that it's important because not everybody just knows how it works.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people that I see, it's their first time ever entering into the
Yeah.
counseling world, because their kid's 5. And so that like they don't know like what the expectation is.
Hmm.
Um, because
Hmm.
like I did work for a time in a community mental health agency
Hmm.
for like a year and a half. I served my time.
Hmm.
And great experience, but we're done. And
Hmm.
so there was a person that I work with that, how do I say this? Their presentation was that they have it all figured out.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the kids did not relate to that,
Hmm.
believe it or not. And that like, why don't you just do this? And I want it really known that like I am not swinging to the full opposite of that,
Hmm.
right? That like everything's game. But that like that I know when and where to talk about things, and that it's not everything is up for grabs, and your kid, your teen, your young adult is still the focus of the session, that it's not like, like one kid said, look, mom, like she wrote a book, like, because it's in my office, and the mom was like, oh, are you gonna be famous? And I'm like, no, we're gonna like tamp that down, because that's not the vibe we're looking for. We don't want to look at me with like starry eyes. We want to look at me with like relatable eyes. So different emoji.
Different emoji. Yeah. I love it.
I had kind of a random question or curiosity, maybe, but I think it relates to Yolanda's thought just then. I do notice that you use a lot of humor and maybe like kind of a darker sense of humor, right? Which I deeply resonate with, and I like any musical reference. So, we're good.
Especially Hamilton.
Especially
There's a
him.
lot in this book.
Oh, good.
There's like six.
Oh, good. I'll pick them out and then I'll hashtag you. So, but I'm kind of curious because, you talked about intentionally kind of covering up or protecting things, putting things in a box, in your old story, right? And now you've learned to not do that quite as much. I'm curious how your sense of humor has changed, if at all, over time as you're trying to communicate these new, like in a new way, right? These old stories in a new way.
Oh, I'm funnier and more humble. It's a hard combination.
Mm.
It's really hard there. That's hard. I mean, I think that that it's important to like stay true to you. And I'm always like off the cuff, like say stuff like that. Uh like, kind of be like, that was a really good point. And I'm like, I make really good points for a living. That's just the way that I am. And my publisher said that the cool thing about my book was that I write like I talk. And so there's some word for it, some fancy word. And so I really love that, which is why I needed to do my own audiobook, because I would have been mad if like somebody didn't do my pauses the right way. I'd be like,
For sure.
that's not how I
Yeah.
am.
Not what that
And so
does.
yeah, I mean, I think I like a lot of the reviews that are coming in, or like it's actually surprisingly funny. Like, and so I'm like, yeah, well, that was on purpose. And I think, and not in a way to like darken the story with just like fluff it around with like comedy. I think that's just who I am. That like that's how I communicate, and that it's not trying to mask anything. Like that's literally me unmasked. Is that just I write like I talk.
Anybody have last questions for Stacy before we wrap up?
My birthday's in May, if that was a question anybody had. Is that not? Is that not? Okay.
That
It
was
So
wasn't on my
your
list, no.
your sign is what then?
Taurus. Stubborn yet loyal. But I don't really relate a lot, because a lot of the comics, when they like do a comic of every like month, is like that we're lazy, and I'm like not lazy, and I don't enjoy that.
There you go. No, I don't think I have any other questions.
no.
I forget how we did this before. Do we ask the guest first or do we go first on
I
the
think we asked Stacy first.
Okay. Okay, Stacy. Your heart know to be true.
What I know to be true is that you can go through the darkest things, and there is always a tomorrow.
Thank you. Yolanda, what does your heart know to be true?
Um, my heart knows that over time, I've realized that the most important part of the work that I do for me is the common humanity piece, the fellow traveler piece, and owning and sharing our own stories helps others to do the same, and it's really brave. So thank you, Stacy.
What about you, Erica?
Um, My heart knows that exploring these pieces that we've put away in the box is so important. But I think what I've learned from Stacy is just the more we can lean into who we are in the authentic way, the more we can embrace what's in the box and share that in a way that actually connects us to other people and they feel more connected to us. So that's pretty cool.
Mm. How
Becca,
about you, Becca?
Yeah,
true.
thanks. Um, my heart knows to trust the wisdom of timing in healing. I think this thing that Stacy shared about how like it kind of wasn't time to look at that until it was, until she
Mm-hmm.
like heard herself saying the thing and like, oh, now is the
Mm-hmm.
time. Um, because I think there are some things that we're just not mature enough to look at yet. We're not ready
Mm-hmm.
to look at yet. And there is some wisdom in trusting our mind, heart, body, spirit that it will know when the right time is for us to do that healing. And so, like, no shame if something sits unexamined for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
If now is the time, then we can trust that.
Mm-hmm.
That. And Willow, she's my therapy dog. She
Hi,
comes does sessions with
Willow.
me. She has
What a
not
pretty
been me.
girl.
She's not been paid attention to in this
Oh,
time, and so
well,
it's
we
hard.
see Willow.
We do.
Yeah. She's like, what I know to be true is that I'm adored, and it's hard when I am not. It's confusing.
Yes, yes, I agree. Stacy, if people want to find out more about your book, the work that you do, what's the best place for them to connect with you?
So my website is stacyschaffer.com, which I'm guessing will be in the show notes because
Yeah,
there's a million ways to spell my name.
yeah.
And so on my website, you can download the first chapter of my book for free. And then there's also a link to be able to get my book, which is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Audible, Spotify. If you have Spotify Premium, I believe it is free. And so there's also like a way to contact me from that website. So stacyschaffer.com.
Awesome.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thanks
Yeah.
for being with us.
Thank you for
And Willow
having me.
too.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome.